All right, we got that up. All right, very good. Well, thank you guys for coming today. Obviously our seminar today is eating healthy on a budget, which, right, everybody's talking about inflation and all of that. So we're talking a little bit about that, but I don't know. There's not much you can do about that, right? So we'll hit on that. I found this really interesting today, which I won't give away the whole presentation right now, but when I was doing the research for this, I had ideas in mind of where I was going to take this and the ways we were going to save money and how we were going to cut our grocery bill. And the more research I did, the more surprised I was by the findings of a really easy and simple way to save money. So I'm excited for you guys to learn about that today. And I have lots of handouts for you today and some recipes. So I'm excited for this. So first, we're just going to look a little bit at food inflation because I find these numbers interesting, but they're also sad and it's Thanksgiving week, so we don't need to focus on that. But so this just shows overall food inflation over the years. Obviously, it's skyrocketed in 2022. It was up in 2021. So the average food inflation percentage raise is about 11%. I know the other day I had my husband get because it's baking season. And so my husband was at Sam's and I was like, get that big thing of butter for me because I need it. It's usually like $10. It's like $15 now, which is super annoying. That's a 50%. Okay, right. I said, we're going to breeze by this. So I found this really interesting. This chart shows, so the average is your 11%. But then each of the categories, you can see which categories are higher of inflation. So cereal and bakery products are the highest, the most inflated. Dairy and related products, so my butter is the highest. Interestingly, so the lowest one is meat, poultry, fish, and eggs.
That's a lie.
Eggs are
super.
Well, I agree with that, but I think that's because there was just another bird flu not that long ago. So I think that's why on eggs, but it seems like those happen every 6 months anyways. So another interesting thing that I really found about this is that, so this orange one is saying food at home. So the food you buy in the grocery store is higher inflated than the food you buy out. I think this food is probably going to quickly increase too, but as of now, we've seen higher inflation in the grocery store versus eating out. Just interesting things to note. Not really much you can do about it, right? But I find these types of things interesting. So we're gonna has anybody ever said or heard somebody say, I hear people say this all the time, healthy food is more expensive? Yes. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? What do you guys think?
I agree.
You guys agree with that?
Yes.
Yes. I'm the health person, right? So I kind of disagree. I think some definitely is more expensive for sure, but I think there's the bigger picture that we also have to look at that. So I'm not here to say healthy food is cheaper, but I do think there's more to compare with it. So I put this scale thing here, and I don't really like to classify food as either healthy or unhealthy, because I think you should have things in moderation. And like I said, I just bought pounds of butter because it's baking season. But for the purpose of this chart, I'm just going to classify it when we're using this argument of healthy food is more expensive. So some different comparisons. If you look at price per calories versus price per satiety, I think generally, not always, but generally something to think about is, yes, you can get the hot dog and soda at Costco for $1.50. That's a really cheap meal, right? That is a lot cheaper than if you make a really nice salad with homemade dressing and grilled chicken and it's beautiful and gorgeous and delicious. Obviously, that's cheaper, right? But the satiety of it or the price per pound, which one is cheaper? I also like to think about the cost. What it costs to buy the hot dog and the soda is $1.50 versus the value that it brings to you. Things to think about. And then also one of my friends and I talk about this all the time now, but there's not really a way to put the number on it. But what's the cost of being healthy right now, living a healthy lifestyle, eating healthy foods, being active versus the complete opposite of the pendulum, and what health issues will that bring down the road? Whether it's mobility issues or if you have really high blood pressure, or it causes cholesterol issues down the road, and then you have to go on medicine for it, and then it causes other issues, and then the snowball effect that happens with that. So that's what the health person says. You don't have to agree, but things to think, just some more context, I guess, that I would put with it. Okay, so here are some really staggering stats, and this is kind of the turning point that changed kind of where I was going with today's presentation. So I will be interested to hear what you guys have to think. So food takes up the most space in US landfills, more than anything else. Meaning we throw away more food than we throw away anything else in the United States. I think is mind-boggling and also really depressing. So we discard more than any other country, about 80 billion pounds, which I don't really know how to equate that to anything, but we will here in a second. So that is about 30 to 40% of the US food supply. So all the food we make, we're throwing away about 30 to 40% of it, which is about 219 pounds of waste per person in a year, which is staggering to me. So where I have this other stat coming up later, but what I realized is that, so there's a stat from the USDA that says, some says 80%, some say 90%. So somewhere in the 80-90% of Americans throw away perfectly good food that we think is spoiled, or maybe it is spoiled, or whatever, we have too much and we just throw it away, or we don't want to eat the leftovers again, or whatever. So 80 to 90% of Americans throw away more food than what is necessary, and we're throwing away about 30 to 40% of our food. If we didn't throw that away, that would automatically decrease your grocery bill by about 30 to 40%, which is more than any other recipe I can give you by saying, hey, let's cook with a lot of beans, or let's use bananas and everything because bananas are cheap. So what we're gonna look at today a lot is ways to repurpose our food, ways to store our food, how to decrease our food waste, what to do with that little bit of food you have left. So that's what we're gonna focus on today, and then we'll go over some other tips at the end as well. Okay, so why is so much food thrown away? There's two main reasons. Number one is food spoilage. You get your raspberries and they're moldy. We buy the food and we think we're gonna eat it, but we buy too much, or then we end up eating out and then we don't get to the food, or we have really good intentions in the grocery store where we're gonna eat those carrots, but then once they're at home, we're like, that's okay, I'll just have veggie straws instead. It's kind of the same thing. So food spoilage is a big reason why we throw food away. But another really, really big reason why is the perception of food spoilage. So we're going to talk about like these signs, these little stamps they have on food, but a lot of times we think food has gone bad and we throw it away. And that's the stat where 80 to 90% of Americans are throwing away food that isn't actually bad, but we think it's bad. We think it's gone bad. Okay, so food product dating, some of these stamps they put on there. Does anybody know what best if used by or before means? Or what do you think it means?
How fresh it's gonna be.
How fresh it's gonna be. If it says it's gonna best if used by November, today's November 21st. If it says best if used by November 20th, are you gonna use it today?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Apparently 10% of you would and 90% of you wouldn't. So we'll go with that stat. So what it actually means is it indicates when the quality is going to be the highest or the freshest. It does not mean that it's like a safety date. That's not what it means. So they have recently, I don't know as of when, but they have recently changed the verbiage from use by to best if used by, because it changes the context and it changes our perception. Because if it just says used by, then you think, okay, I have to use this by. If it's best if used by, then there's less confusion on our part and we understand, okay, that just means it's best if I use it by this date, but I can use it after this date. So that's a change that they have made on some things, not everything, because yes, what they found was there was a lot of confusion on our part and we're throwing away food. Sell by, you guys see this in the store? Does anybody know what this means or what do you think it means? Do you think it means the same thing as use by? You saw it? No.
The store just has to get rid of it by then.
Yes, exactly. So it's telling the store when they have to get rid of their stuff by from like an inventory perspective, so they can just move products. So that's honestly another way that you can save money in the grocery store is if you buy things on or close to the sell by date. Usually the stores will mark those down because they have to get them pushed out for inventory purposes, but from a safety and freshness perspective, you're totally fine to do that, and that'll save you a couple bucks. Use by, so this is actually the same thing as best if used by. It's just kind of like the older language that was used, and so they've changed it. The only thing that the use by is different on is infant formula. So that actually is, if it says used by, it like expires after that date and you can't safely use it. Any questions on this? Some things will also say like used by or freeze by. I was just looking at some turkey this morning and mine says that use by or freeze by. So you basically, exactly what it sounds like, use it by that date or put it in the freezer. If you put it in the freezer, it extends that life a lot longer. So you don't have to use it before then. Okay, so then if you don't go by the date on the package, then you actually just go by the signs of spoilage, which signs of spoilage, I put this picture up because I swear my husband sniffs the milk every single time he pulls it out, like brand new one, brand new milk, gotta sniff it. He has a sniff test. Drives me crazy.
It
Yeah,
works that way.
It does, and that is better than just going by the date,
Yes.
honestly, because we go through a lot of milk. We have 3 kids. My parents are dairy farmers, so we're really happy to support the industry. But like there's times where our milk will go bad before the date, and there's times where it's after the date. And it's still good. So some of it is just perception, but what you actually should be looking for in your food are for the signs of spoilage, not the date. Okay, so you can tell when milk has gone bad. You can usually tell when any food has gone bad, right? The smell is off, the texture is off, your carrots are slimy, or there's little stuff growing in there. So obviously if it actually has gone bad, you should throw it away. But what we're gonna go through is getting to the food before it goes bad. But what I want you to learn from this though is don't throw away perfectly good food. And you can cut your grocery bill by a lot. Okay, I'm gonna touch briefly on eating out. Stats say the average American household spends more than $3,000 per year on eating out. I'm sure some are higher, some are lower, just depends on your own specific family, but that's average. That's quite a bit. That's a lot of money. But you know, when it's here and there, it adds up over the expensive meal. Generally speaking, when we eat out, there's more food waste than when we eat at home. It depends on the restaurant, but a lot of times they serve more food than what you actually eat. So if you consider that eating out, generally speaking, is more expensive than eating at home, and you're throwing away more food than you do at home, that impacts your money. Generally, it's more expensive, not always, right? Costco had, like I've been saying, for $1.50 hot dog, that's cheaper, but generally speaking, it's more expensive. And generally speaking, it's less healthy, not always, but usually if you're eating out healthy, usually that's at a premium cost. Like that's a lot more expensive to eat healthy out than it is to eat at home. So just a couple stats to make note of There. So some tips to avoid food waste. So we're gonna go over three things I want you to nail into your head. The first one is think. So we're gonna think really hard about this. We're gonna make a meal plan for the week. We talk about meal plan all the time. It's like one of my things I harp on, but it's so important for so many reasons. So from a budget perspective, when we meal plan and we meal plan efficiently and we make a list, we're going to save ourselves money, because if you don't meal plan, then it gets to be mealtime and maybe you'll eat out, or maybe you'll just run at the store to grab this and that and not thinking about what you have at home, of shopping from your pantry. When we meal plan efficiently, so let's say we're buying, let's just take onions, because you can buy like a bag of onions. If you buy a bag of onions in bulk, think efficiently about that. Are you going to use the other 5 onions before they go bad? If you are, good. If you're not, then, 2 things to think about. Then maybe you don't buy the bag of onions, you buy 1 or 2 onions. Or you change your meal plan where, all right, it's onion week and we're going to use onions and everything and we're going to use them all up. So that's what I mean, my meal plan efficiently. Think about the quantities of the foods you should be buying, and either buy less or plan your meal plan around it.
Or you could chop them up and freeze them.
Yes, we're coming to that. They always say a good student knows the direction of the instructor, so that's where we're going to be going. And then I always say, make a list, because otherwise you will forget things while you're in the store, or you won't know how many. You just write onions. How many onions do you need? So think about it. So that's the first one. Think. The second one is shop. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later, so I'm going to hold some things back. But when you shop, I want you to realistically assess how much food is required. We generally, as Americans, overestimate the amount of food that we need. So we generally end up buying more than what we really need, which again makes sense because we're throwing away 30 to 40% of our food. So be realistic about how much food you actually need. Sometimes my husband gets this on me. We're either like feast or famine at our house. Either it's like this great, wonderful meal, home cooked 7 days in a row, and then we have like a ridiculous amount of leftovers, or it's like, all right, we're scrounging for supper for the next 7 days. Hope you can find something. It's one or the other. But if I'm just realistic about it and like, no, we're not going to cook 7 nights in a row, we're going to have some give and take here, then we're going to have less food waste. So think, shop, and then store. We're going to talk a lot about storing our food today, so that way we don't lead to food spoilage. But if we store our food properly, it's going to help prevent our food from going to food storage. Does anybody know the temperature of your fridge at home? You do? What do you know what yours is?
Well,
It tells you.
yeah, it tells.
Okay.
We've got a thermometer actually in there, because especially the one in the garage. Because
Oh,
when it gets
yes.
cooler out, we have to turn it up or turn it out.
Yes.
So that-
That's good. And so that's one of the really key recommendations, is to have your fridge set at 40 degrees or cooler, and to not put the things on the door of your fridge that go bad quicker, because the food on your door is going to have more temperature fluctuations because it's opening and closing, unless if it's like you said in the garage in the winter, then it wouldn't. But generally, if it's inside and it's on the door, it's gonna go more fluctuations. So if you don't have a fridge thermometer, that would be a great thing for a stocking stuffer. Christmas time is coming up, to find out what your temperature is, or maybe it's in your fridge. Maybe just don't look and it's actually in there, but 40 degrees or lower. So you might have to adjust accordingly. And then just keeping tabs on the status of your food. When your fridge is organized, you can see what's in there. You don't have random stuff growing in the back of your fridge that you don't know about until you have to shuffle stuff around to fit the turkey in the fridge. And you're like, oh, that's where that went. That's gross. So keep tabs of what is in your fridge. When you are, let's say you're getting close to something going bad, If you don't have the time to freeze it or do something with it, which we're going to talk in a little bit about, share it. Share it with friends, coworkers, neighbors. That is a great thing to do. And then we're going to talk a lot about freezing food here in a little bit, so I'll hold off on that. One thing I found while I was researching this, there's a website called Love Food Hate Waste, and they have tons of tips and they have tons of recipes. They also have a portion calculator on there. So sometimes when, let's say if you have a lot of people coming for Thanksgiving or for Christmas or whatever you have coming up, and you're like, well, I know how much food to cook for my family, but when you add this many people in, I don't even know how much food that is. And then if you're like me, then you make way too much because heaven forbid you run out of something. So they have a calculator where you can put in, okay, how much rice do I need for this many people? You can put in any ingredient and it will tell you exactly how much you need of it to help you plan more accordingly. Okay, does anybody want to guess the foods that are thrown out the most? I don't have any prizes, but you get bananas. Yes.
Salad mix.
Salad mix, that's the top one. Any other guesses?
Bread.
Yes, bread is the top one. Let's see if you guys are missing any. There's a couple more.
Like fruit in general.
Yeah, fruit in general. Yogurt wasn't on the list for a top one.
Milk.
Yes, milk is a common one.
Cheese.
Cheese was not as common. I mean, it depends on your, specific.
Eggs.
Eggs wasn't on the list. There's two really big ones that I know I do.
You could freeze eggs. Hamburger. You can freeze.
That
eggs.
one wasn't top. I'll tell you the other two.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said bread, bag salads was like the top one, like the mixes and yeah, any much of the bag stuff, because that stuff kind of goes bad, like as soon as you get it. Fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, cooked leftovers is a really common one thrown away, where the food's already been made and either you don't want to eat it or it goes bad or you're just like, bleh. That one's really common. Fresh herbs, I know I have thrown away so many fresh herbs, and I learned this amazing thing. Maybe you guys do this. This is like going to be life-changing for me though. So normally when I buy like cilantro or parsley or whatever, because I don't grow it, which would be a better idea, but I don't grow it. When you only use a part of it, you have a plastic ice cube tray. You can put your chopped herbs in the little ice cube spots, and then you pour olive oil over it to the top, and then you freeze it. And then once it's frozen, you pop them out, put them in a little baggie, and then the next time you're cooking, if you're going to be sauteing vegetables or making a sauce or whatever, you just put your little olive oil with your herbs in it in your pan, then it's already ready to go for you. So not only does it save you from throwing away your herbs, but then it saves you a lot of time. So you could do it either way. Like if you're trying to meal prep and to save time, or if you're just trying not to throw away those herbs. So I'm so excited about this because this is going to be life-changing. Yeah.
I always heard you're supposed to use water, but olive oil would be better because you.
Well, because then if you're going to be putting it on the stove or on your skillet,
Yeah.
then it would just be ready to go. Because otherwise, I think you would probably have to, I don't know. Have you done it? Do you have to like?
No, I haven't actually done. That's why I never
Yeah.
did, because it's like, okay, I'm gonna have too much water.
Yeah, I would do olive oil. Because then it'll be ready to go for you. And you don't have to thaw it. You just pop it on there and
Good idea.
you're good. That's one of my life-changing.
So do you fill the whole, you just coat it or fill the whole cube with olive oil?
I don't think you would have to do the whole cube. The videos I watched of it was like, I think it depends on how many herbs. You put enough olive oil in to like mostly cover it. But if you only do it like half full, then you could just do it half full as well. But yeah, all the videos I saw it wasn't the full way up. So I expect everybody to try it. And let me know. what they
Should have
think.
did it before the herbs froze outside.
Right. Yes, I know. Right. You got to keep this one remembering. So what can't you freeze? Are there any things that come to mind where you think, I can't freeze that? I have a handy dandy list for everybody of things you can freeze and things you cannot freeze. But honestly, there's very, very little you can't freeze. Very few. I think this is enough. My grandma, my grandma and grandpa grew up in the Great Depression, so obviously they didn't throw away anything. And that woman froze everything. She froze milk, which you can do. My sister-in-law freezes milk.
I've heard like butter freeze.
Yes, I have, but I've frozen butter. I can attest to that one.
Butter all the time.
Yes.
I buy it on, when it's on sale, and I have stacks of it in my freezer.
Yes.
So
We've done shredded cheese.
Yes, shredded cheese freezes really well.
I've never frozen eggs, but I've heard you can do that.
I have not froze eggs. But eggs stay good for so long.
Way past like.
You way past their
we
date.
eat ours way before that date, but.
Yeah, yeah. So like on the back, on the don't freeze, that's like, there's so few things that you can't freeze. Some of these I also disagree with. So you can freeze cooked rice. I freeze cooked rice all the time. I make it in huge batches and then I put it like in little quart baggies and then I just pull it out like that. So you absolutely can freeze cooked rice. When I heat it up, I just add a little bit of water to it so it's not dry. Tomatoes, does anybody have a frozen tomatoes? Yes, you can freeze tomatoes instead of like putting them in the hot water bath, you can freeze them and then the skin comes right off. So those ones you can definitely freeze as well. I've never frozen sour cream or yogurt before though, I can say. But point being that you can freeze so many things as long as you get to your food before it goes bad, you can extend the life of it and save so much money. I don't know how many times I have thrown something away because it's gone bad and then like what appears on my grocery list, the same thing I just threw away. And if we just make those changes 30 to 40%, that's gonna drastically decrease. So this is a tool for you guys to help you specifically, but also just to remember that if you take a little bit of time, there's things you can do about it. I also wanted to say, I sometimes will, like my vegetables, sometimes might go bad before we get to them. And sometimes people don't like to freeze their vegetables because if you just, let's say, cut them up and put them in a bag, they're just all gonna clump together, which is fine if you're gonna be making soup out of them or something. But things I have done, like with green peppers, and I've done them with celery, they say you can't freeze celery. I have absolutely frozen celery. But if you chop it up and then I get like a cookie sheet and then I just lay them flat on my cookie sheet and then put them in the freezer for like an hour, then you can put them into a bag and they don't, because they're each individual one, you don't want them touching when you put them in your cookie sheet, then each little individual piece is frozen. And so it has like that icicle, let's just say, around it so they don't all clump together. It's an extra step, but if you need it so they don't clump together, you can do that. If you don't care, then just toss them in whatever and you'll be good to go. So some other things I'm going to give you today are some recipes of things that you can use up your foods. So I'm going to pass this one around first. I'm going to be sending a little baggie with everybody today with a sample of these for you guys to try them. I had it for breakfast this morning myself and it was maybe too many, but that's okay. That's pretty good. Has anybody ever bought or seen the, I don't know if Jimmy Dean's makes it or who makes it, but they're like the just add an egg scramble, which are like, I don't know how much they are per little thing, but they're not super cheap. So these are DIY, just crack an egg. I will say you can put whatever you want together, whatever leftover foods you have, you can toss these together for them. So I'm going to show you what I made for you guys the Denver egg scramble. So chopped up onion, chopped up green pepper, sweet potato that's been cooked, ham and cheese. You can store them in little baggies, or if you have lots of mason jars, you could store it in a mason jar to freeze it. If you store it in a mason jar, then you can cook it directly in your mason jar. If you put it in a baggie, then you would transfer it like to a bowl or whatever. So you assemble these little bags, any of the recipes listed or whatever happens to be lying around in your fridge that's about to go bad and you want to use it up. Instructions are, it's in here, you pour it into a bowl. You can either crack 1 egg or 2 eggs into it, depending on how much you want. And then you put it in the microwave and cook it for like a minute, stir it up, cook it for another minute until your egg is done. If it's in a mason jar and it's clear, then you can, see through that way, so you wouldn't have to stir it as much. If it's in a mug or a bowl, you will have to stir it more to make for sure that your egg is all the way cooked through. But I am excited about these because these kill so many birds with one stone, because not only can you use up food in your fridge and save it for later, it's also great for meal prep, for easy breakfasts, and they're also really cheap. For these bags that I made today for you guys, I bought everything, and each bag, I made 34 bags and I spent $30, which included buying the bags. So each little serving is like 75 cents for a breakfast. All you have to do is add an egg. And yes, eggs are gone up, but comparatively speaking, eggs are fairly cheap. So it's a cheap breakfast. It uses food up and it's meal prep, and it can give you lots of veggies and good protein. So that's a great idea for you guys to try out. I also am going to pass around some other recipes. I included my base smoothie recipe. That's kind of like my starting point for all the smoothies I make, because fruits obviously can be frozen, readily available, which is great for smoothies. Again, bananas, they go brown quick. They go from not ready to like 2 hours of perfection to brown spots. Bananas freeze really well to add into smoothies. I'm sure you guys wouldn't, but if you have little kids, my kids love banana swirl, which is one of the grossest things I've ever tried, but it is just frozen bananas that you puree. So it's like pureed frozen bananas, and they think it's like ice cream. So try it if you have any little people in your life. But otherwise add them to smoothies. So I have that on there. I put the ice cube herbs recipe just so you, it's pretty basic, but just so you kind of have it written. And then a basic frittata recipe. Frittata is, it's basically like kind of like an omelet, kind of like an egg bake, kind of in the middle, use up whatever you have laying around in your fridge. It's kind of like stir fry in that regard. So on the back are different combinations of frittata that you can make, but it's kind of like your egg scrambles where anything goes. You don't have to stick to a specific recipe, but basically you whisk up your eggs, you add in some onions, some milk, salt and pepper, and then your mix-ins, and you cook it for a couple minutes on the stove. And then if you have like a cast iron skillet or a Dutch oven, you can leave it in that. If not, you'll have to transfer it to a pan. And then you move it into the oven to let it finish baking in the oven till it gets firm, and it would be more like something you can cut up. But a great, easy recipe to use up food that you have. I will also speak to my kids and my husband, because they like frittata, and some things I make, they just get annoyed that I'm trying to make them eat healthy. So it's approved. So some other creative things that you can do, if you ever buy like the bags of limes or lemons and you don't get to them. A couple things you could do is you can clean with the lemons and the limes. The citrusy and the acid is a good cleaning product. You can also do ice cube citrus. So you can squeeze, like if you have a juicer or just with your hand, you can squeeze the juice into ice cube trays and then you can freeze that as well. So you'd have frozen, fresh lemon or lime juice ready to go for whatever you're making, if you're adding it into a recipe, or if you're making smoothies, you could toss that into a smoothie. Berries or any fruits you can freeze to add to, I generally do smoothies, but anything else. You can also cook them down on the stove, or if you have apples, you could cook your apples down, turn them into applesauce before they go bad, same with pears. Vegetables, in addition to just freezing them and dicing them up, you can roast them to extend the life of them. Stir fry is always my go-to. Let's get everything, clear out the fridge. Has anybody ever made vegetable broth before? I went to a cooking class at SEC one time with my mom because there's weird things I like to do. And we learned how to make bone broth, which is like actually cooking like with, like if you cooked chicken and then like what's left over with it, which is really cool, but a little bit more of an involved process. But if you do vegetable broth, so if you have, there's lots of different recipes out there, but basically if you have like carrots, celery, and onions, you can make vegetable broth. So if you have some of those going bad, you basically just dice them up, or not even dice them, like quarter them up, put them on the stove with water and some seasonings, and you just like let them simmer and cook for like an hour or two so that all the flavor from the vegetables goes into the water, and then you just strain out your vegetables and then you have vegetable broth. So instead of buying that from the store, you have your own homemade. It's gonna have less sodium, it's gonna taste better, and you used up your vegetables, and you can easily freeze your vegetable broth super well. You can do it in, you know, any type of container. They also make, again, Christmas is coming up. They're called like super cubes, but SOUP, like super cubes, and they are portion size little silicone molds that you can freeze your soup in. So you pour, like the ice cube trays, you pour them in to your silicone molds, freeze them, and then you pop them out into little chunks so you can reheat. You can do the same thing with your vegetable broth to freeze it. Pesto is another homemade thing that you can make with some food that is going bad as well. Does anybody have any go-to recipes of, oh, this food is about to go bad, so I'm gonna make this? Share.
Can you freeze pesto?
I think so.
I'm used to stir fry a lot.
Yes, stir fry, yeah. Does anybody make, like any of their pasta sauces, like cook up vegetables and like puree them and then sneak them into your pasta sauce? If not, you should, because that's vegetables and it's also another way to use stuff up. Pesto is not on the don't freeze list, so it's not on the, no, it is, it's on the freeze list, so there you go. You can freeze pesto. Good. Okay, so that section is all about decreasing our food waste. Some other tips, which was what I was planning to be the bulk of today's information. And these are definitely things that can save you money too, but I do think you're gonna save more money if you decrease the amount of food that you're overbuying, and if you decrease the amount of food that you're unnecessarily throwing away because you think it's bad, and by decreasing the amount of food that you actually do throw away if you get in front of it before it actually goes bad. But other tips of things that we can do, I already talked about this. Meal plan, make a list, shop accordingly. Aside from decreasing food waste when we meal plan, also if we meal plan, that's going to save us money, because it's, I think of it like Christmas. If you're Christmas shopping in like October and November, when it's still this great, wonderful, beautiful, happy activity, you're gonna spend less money than if you're shopping on the 23rd of December, because you're frantically shopping like, I gotta get up something. If you're doing it ahead of time, you're gonna spend less money. I think of the same thing with grocery shopping. Work out if you're actually getting a good deal. My mom is super good at doing the opposite of this. Like, buy one, get one free. Well, okay, maybe not free because you're not spending extra. Buy one, get one half off. And she's like, yeah, we're gonna do it. But we don't need to. So we're actually just spending more money. Let's just buy one because we only need one. So figure out if you're actually getting a good deal. If you're gonna buy a bag of, well, we have this coming up, but if you're gonna buy something in bulk, because it's cheaper per item to buy it in bulk, but if you don't actually use it all, or if you throw some away, you're not actually getting a good deal. So figure out if what you're buying actually makes sense for you. Know your price points. I think of this, with The Price is Right. When they have like, visit the over, the under, or you have your grocery items and you have to know if it's, are they in the right order of price point, or they say it's this, is it less? You would do really well at Price is Right. If you know that, you're also gonna do really well in the grocery store. If you know your price points, and so you know if this food is on sale, if it's a good price or not a good price. Think through what makes sense to buy in bulk. We talked about that. Cook out of your pantry and out of your fridge and out of your freezer. This ties in with making a meal plan. If you look through, oh, I kind of forgot I cut up all of those celery that's in my freezer right now. Plan a meal around to use that food up. If you have something in the fridge that's about to go bad, plan a meal to use that up. My mom looks, and if you go in her pantry, it looks like she is ready for the apocalypse because there's so much canned stuff in there. But if you plan to cook out of your pantry, you're gonna save money in the grocery store because you can use what you already have. Switch to store brands with whatever you decide you would like to switch to store brands with. Everybody has their products where you have to buy a name brand, and that's fine. But some things, it probably doesn't really matter. Try out Aldi or Trader Joe's. They usually have pretty good prices on a lot of foods. Grocery pickup. I think grocery pickup saves a lot of money, because we are impulsive buyers. We're impulsive shoppers. You might not think to buy this, that, and the other thing if you're not walking by it in the store. If you are just on your phone or on your computer, just typing out your list, you generally are going to just stick with the list that you made. Generally, if you're in the store, you're gonna, oh, I haven't tried that. Let's give those a try. Oh, that's kind of fun. Or your 5-year-old's like, Mom, we really need these things.
But what if it's on sale? Then it might be
But
a
the,
better idea.
right,
If it's something you
yes.
can use.
Yes, and there are times when you're in the store and you see, oh, I was gonna buy, let's just say, green peppers, but the red peppers are on sale, so I'm gonna buy the red peppers instead of the green peppers because they're cheaper today. So yes, that's absolutely true. Generally, though, we just fill our cart up with a lot of other stuff. So if you're really disciplined, I guess I would say, if you go in the store, be really disciplined. Shop less often, because when we go to the store, we might pick up random stuff. And if we pick up random stuff every time, the more frequently we shop, the more random stuff we're gonna get, which then raises our bill. So if we shop less often, we're gonna get fewer random items, which overall is gonna cost less. Buy in-season produce. I know we're like in out of season right now, so remember this, I guess, come summer, but when herbs are really cheap and when strawberries are really cheap, buy a bunch of them and freeze them. If you're a canner, can them. Make a bunch of ice cube herb trays. So it'll be good for the whole year. When it is in season, buy in bulk, but you gotta plan accordingly, right? We have to buy, you can buy with good intentions, but we also have to be realistic as well. Grow your own greens. So we talked about the most commonly thrown away food is bagged salad, but also greens in general are thrown away a lot because sometimes the shelf life is really short on them. Spinach you can freeze really easily, and those go into smoothies no problem, or if you're sauteing them down. Things like romaine, you can't really freeze. But so things like romaine and your leafy greens, they are the most expensive food per pound. But they also can be grown really easily and really cheaply. You can put them in a pot. You don't have to have, you know, a massive garden to grow them. So you can grow those on your own accord. I have a friend who does have a massive garden, but she grows kale and romaine and spinach. And it's honestly the easiest food that she grows in her garden. It kind of like keeps reappearing, and she will get lettuce in like March or April. And it will go, because it's so hardy, and it'll go through like October. So there's only a couple months of the year that she doesn't have it. So it's a really easy one to grow as well. So with that, I want to thank you guys for coming today. Does anybody have any questions or other thoughts to share before I pass out my goodies?
I do.
Yeah,
We cook with a lot of vegetable oil.
yeah.
Is that healthy or is there a, not sure?
Yes, so I generally use olive oil because the type of fat that's in olive oil is a healthier type of fat than vegetable oil. Some things you have to use vegetable oil with in the sense, so there's different flash points of different oils. So depending on, like, I think vegetable oil and like peanut oil has the highest flash point, so it can get the hottest. As opposed, let's say more on the opposite end of the spectrum is like coconut oil. It has a low flash point, which basically means if you have a low flash point, it's going to burn at a lower temperature. So let's say you were going to make stir fry with coconut oil. Instead of it cooking in your coconut oil, it would probably just burn in your coconut oil. Does that make sense? So olive oil is a lower flash point than vegetable oil, but generally you're still fine. Like I pretty much only saute with olive oil, and it's never too hot where it freezes it. So it's the type of fats that are in the oils that makes the difference. Or like avocado oil, it gives you a lot of really good healthy fats in it. Avocado oil, though, is a lower flash point than, let's say, olive oil. So I would say that's the only thing to kind of keep in mind, is depending on how hot your temperature is with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
Even if you don't want to do a grocery pickup, like build a cart online because you're gonna see the price and it might stop you from, oh, I don't need that this week.
Yeah.
I don't. You're able to see your total before you.
Yes, that is such a good point. I forgot to say that. That is another great thing about doing, yeah, if you build your cart before, or if you do grocery pickup or whatever, you see your total amount accumulating in your cart. My husband gives me a hard time because our grocery bill each week is like within the dollar amount every single week. Because I'm like, this is the amount of money we're gonna spend, and we'll just have to get by without this if we're gonna go over it. But it's a good thing because it kind of helps hold you accountable, instead of you're at the checkout line, you're like, oh, that was a little bit more than I was planning on, but okay. But yeah, good point.
I kind of meal plan with the grocery ads.
Yeah.
So I see what's on sale. I'm like, okay, well, what can I make with that?
Yes.
And that's how I meal plan.
Yeah.
Just list.
That is great. That's really good. Any other tips? This is good.
Shop at Aldi for baking stuff during the holidays.
Yes. Yes. No joke. And you can freeze, I don't know if this is on the list, you can freeze flour. Yeah, you can freeze flour because flour, it can go, there's a date on flour as well. And so if you don't bake a lot, you can freeze flour or freeze it in smaller quantities, and you can bake it directly from the freezer. Like you don't have to make it go to room temperature.
I freeze flour and sugar, just,
Yeah,
it's on sale, buy it when it's on sale.
Yes. Yes.
Then you have it when you need it.
Yes. And you can freeze bread too. My husband's grandma freezes her bread because she's one person and she doesn't go through that much. So hers always goes stale, and she'll like freeze them individually and just pull them out.
If you put it in the fridge, it'll go bad faster than if you put it in the freezer.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like crystallizes in the fridge
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
but It'll last longer if you put it in the
Just put it in
freezer.
the freezer. Yeah. Good. Alrighty, well, thank you guys. Is there anybody else on Teams who, do you have any questions or any?
Yes, there were. Maybe like. Fine. Not yours. Traveling this week?